so-called strongholds for the Patriotic Front, right? Which I would say for the opposition this time. I think it's not that bad, right? In that, of course, we retained the one in our so-called stronghold, and we have managed to snatch, if you like, to snatch one from the Patriotic Front or from the opposition. And obviously the other two, well, we were not successful. But I think what's important is that in the so-called opposition stronghold, we have managed to snatch one.
Do you still feel that you're gaining ground in what you're claiming as strongholds? There was concerns and letters written to the Electoral Commission of Zambia by the Patriotic Front in one of these by-elections, particular Kampanda, where their candidate withdrew, that he wanted a job in government, that you, the UPND, had engineered to buy candidates off so that they don't contest in these elections.
Costa, is it the giraffe telling the python you are too long, right? Because I think what they are saying is about themselves, because they used to do it, so they think we are doing that. We did not buy anybody. I don't even know what happened. I think it was one of those who were recruited as teachers. Look, when we were recruiting, we were not scrutinizing names, who is who. No, there were certain guidelines, certain benchmarks, if you like, right? And those benchmarks, they were considered, and a group of them, 30,000 of them, almost 12,000 of the other on the Ministry of Health list. They were gotten. We didn't even look at the names. We didn't even know. I just learned afterwards that some councillors actually applied and they got jobs. I even said, oh my God, again another by-election. You see what I mean? So we never bought anybody, and it's not our policy to do.
But if it was the case, you wouldn't admit it, would you? If it were the case, you would not admit it.
For me, I think if it were the case, I think I would rather just keep quiet. Because you see, I'm a Christian, and I'm very much mindful of Proverbs 6, verse 16 to 18. Right? One of the things that God hates, if you like, there are 4 or 5. He said he hates them, and 6 are an abomination or something like that. The second one out of that is a lying tongue. So I'm very particular. So maybe if we bought I don't think if I knew, I wouldn't even answer that question. I'll just say, well, I'll just keep quiet.
Let's come back to the critical, issues affecting the livelihood of Zambians, like I said earlier, and jump straight into the issue of load, shedding as we know it. Last week, Friday, the acting energy minister, Douglas Yakalema, announced the reduction from 12 to 8-hour load management with 4-hour intermittency. My concern, Madam, Deputy SG, is the sort of incoherent communication coming from your party and different government officials regards this matter of, load shedding. But in particular, this continued finger pointing and blame on the PF for everything that you failed to handle as a new administration. You in particular have been quoted in many sections of the media accusing the PF and blaming them of this mess. Should we be blaming the PF for all your failures?
Costa, first of all, I personally, on this one, I've never blamed anybody. All I've said, if you will go back to Diggers, I said it was an act of God. Because if the Zambezi River dries up, should we point a finger at an individual? No.
In the same edition of the Diggers on that day, there were 3 different stories. One from the presidential spokesperson saying the PF, dried up all the water in the Kariba, which is not true, that, because the Zambezi River Authority came out and said Zimbabwe took most of the water. The president was complaining that technocrats were not telling him the truth. You are now saying it's an act of God. Same things that you were telling the PF is a lack of leadership. So why are you failing to take responsibility over your failures as a party in power?
Costa, how can I take responsibility when the Zambezi River is drying up? What am I supposed to do?
But why would you say that the PF took the water?
Costa,
Why would Anthony Bwalia say that the PF, are the ones responsible? They dried up all the water. You saw that statement in the Diggers. The same edition where you were quoted.
The thing is, from the technocrats' point of view, what I came to learn is that there is supposed to be some kind of control, right, on how much water passes in to turn the turbines. And this water is measured. There's a gadget there which measures the amount of water that passes through the... So it's supposed to be controlled somehow. But it appears, from what I came to learn later on from the technocrats, that even though Zimbabwe had used more this time, and this time compared to us, but I understand even us in the past, we have also not been able to control the situation. Now, if we are talking about the past, Costa, who was there in the past? And this thing of whenever we mention the past, people say, no, you shouldn't look at the past. Just Costa, we cannot avoid mentioning history.
Granted,
right? In everything.
Granted, for you to move forward, you need to look at the past. But amongst yourselves as a party and in power, you, Madam SG, should be aware that some of your ministers, your party members are sick and tired of this finger pointing, saying the people voted you into office knowing very well that the PF have disappointed them, and they were looking to you for hope. So what you're telling the people, they already know. And you promise the people solutions. Sometimes
they don't know, right? Sometimes they don't know. Did the people know that we overused our allocation of the water?
But that's not what Zerare was saying. They said Zimbabwe used.
Did the people know? We have to tell them, right? So we have to mention that kind of thing. Yes, you are talking about inconsistency. Maybe it's the information. For me, if the Zambezi River dries up, as a lay person, I cannot go and blame somebody. I cannot finger point at anybody. For me, what I said is, if the Zambezi River, if there's this climate change and things like that, indeed, something dries up, it's okay. If you don't want to believe in God, then say it's an act of nature. Right? It's like if you have a storm. If you have a storm, Costa,
yes.
Are you going
since you want to refer to the past, what did you, the UPND in the opposition, say or tell the PF in 2015 when we had the worst load shedding this country has ever gone through, when they started asking people to pray for rain? What was your reaction?
I don't know. I was in opposition.
You choose to forget?
Hello, wait a minute.
You choose to forget what the UPND said?
Wait a minute, Costa. I was in Parliament that time. And we went to Kafue Gorge. We saw what had happened. We went to Kariba, I think as a parliamentary committee. We went even to Kariba Dam. They showed us. So, yes, maybe there were members of the opposition who said what, but I never blamed anybody.
Yeah. Not you as an individual. You are Secretary General, Deputy of the UPND, so you need to be accountable for your party. And when you refer to the past, the UPND is on record, while in the opposition, saying the aspect of dependency on hydropower and load shedding is a lack of visionary leadership. That was what you were saying. When there was COVID, there was climate change, you said it was poor planning. And so people put you in power expecting that you will give us alternatives and a better plan. So why are we seeing this incoherence with a visionary UPND?
Costa, you yourself, when you introduced this, you said you were how many months in power?
17.
And if 17 months in power, certain things are still being put in place. If you are going to invest in alternative sources of energy, were you going to do it at lightning speed? Mind you, Costa, we inherited a very sick economy, right? So while we're organizing resources, you have seen, really, I feel sorry for our president. You have seen how he has been shuttling here and there to try to, you cannot invest when you don't have resources. To try and harness resources here and there and so on, so that we can implement what we promised to do. It cannot take overnight, Costa, right? It takes time. We still have 43 months. And already, within this, how much have we done? So if it is talking about alternative sources of power, or enhancing the power output, the generation, in fact, from 2015, if they heeded our call, shouldn't they have? Should we be talking about this? But also, they didn't invest.
If you say,
Costa.
Just a moment. If you say they didn't invest, the current demand needed is 1,080 megawatts, and we know that Lake Kariba is only powering out 400. Mamba was giving us only 150 out of the 300, but they're now, back. What about the 3,300 watt capacity that the PF say they built? Where's the power from, Kafiwe Lower and Kafiwe Upper? Where's the power from Itezi? Where's the power from Lusuishi? Where's the power from, all these other smaller, dams, Madam SG?
You are the one who has said that there was shortage of power. That's why there were outages. So if we told them that time, if they did more as expected, then we wouldn't be talking about shortage this time. So maybe they didn't do enough, but you are expecting a miracle from us that within 17 months we should have put up all this amid a devastated economy.
We're not expecting miracle. We're expecting leadership and solutions. And you still haven't answered my question. I'll ask you again. We've been told by ZESCO that we need 1,080 megawatts. Just Kariba and Mamba, 4 plus 300 is 700. But I'm asking the question, where is the power from the other, plants? Kafiwe, Iteji, and others. Maybe let me even put...
Costa. Kafiwe and Iteji. Even when I became a member of parliament in 2011, those were already there, right? They were already there.
There was an upgrade.
Kafiwe was there.
And there was an upgrade.
Yes, there was an upgrade.
So they
invested. What you're saying that why do we still have shortage? If at all, then they invested as was expected. And here we are shuttling out, and we are going to increase the output. So
the viewer will want to find out from you.
The other criticism was that, you remember, President Michael Sata, may his soul rest in peace. You remember that he gave free electricity to Zimbabwe as a donation, and he was criticized for that. Right? Which means they found some surplus.
Talking about surplus, Madam Imenda, and since you want to refer to such examples, explain to a poor widow running a salon this evening, a young man running a barbershop or a welding, outlet somewhere in Kalingalinga or somewhere in Kasama. You are still selling power to Namibia. You're selling power to ESCOM at the expense of load shedding a Zambian for 8 hours. Isn't that the same thing you're talking about? Do you then care for the Zambian?
Costa, at the time we entered into such a contract, we had enough power, right? We had enough power. But now this crisis came, and everybody is expecting that suddenly we cut the contract. There are contractual obligations which you cannot just suddenly cut without facing some even dire consequences. Maybe we are going to be sued and would even pay more. We don't have resources to pay for that. But that's why the president and the government, the president is going out there to try and look for sources. We cannot just see a contractual obligation, just cut it like that.
Hold on,
from the legal point of view, you don't do things like that.
Hold on a minute. So this UPND government is telling us that you're so capitalist that you put money and business over your people. What kind of a parent would let their children suffer at the expense of a contract?
And if we were going to be sued and we were going to pay more, who was going to suffer? Still the same people were going to suffer.
So local businesses must close? The local businesses...
They're not closing. You can see we are looking for alternative sources.
Madam SG, unless you're not on the ground, people are suffering.
Yes, I know.
People running barbershops and salons, you're telling them today it's okay, they can close?
This is a crisis. It's an emergency, Costa.
At the expense of a contract?
It's not something that was planned. It's an emergency, right? So we are looking at alternative ways of trying to enhance power without getting into the trouble of being sued by cutting the contract that we have signed. You have to be very careful, right? Yeah, there are consequences, Costa. You and I are not lawyers, but we know the basic law of contract.
But how do you sell a commodity that you don't have?
At the time, I think we had. At the time we had. We wouldn't sell if there was no excess. We sold because there was surplus at the time. But then this is a crisis that has come. It's an emergency.
So let me get something straight. Again, this is the incoherence in communication. You are saying for legal matters we can't cut the contracts. Justice Minister Mlambo Himbe was sitting where you are there and he says we can negotiate our way out of some of these contracts. So it's possible. Energy Minister Kapala and the President are saying we need to sell power because it's an aspect of job creation. So I'm not understanding. By the way, how do we create jobs when local small businesses are being affected by this power cut?
That one, ask, as you said, me, I'm talking about what I know, right? They know better also. But me, I'm looking at it from the legal point of view. Nobody wants anybody to suffer. You and I are also affected, aren't you? We're also affected.
And I'll ask you a question on my own behalf. What would you tell a small business, a TV station like this one, that has to use 47 litres of diesel every day, which is costing us around 1,700 kwacha, and yet we are reporting that you're exporting power to Namibia? What do you tell them? Where do I get the extra money?
Costa, I think I've answered that question.
That is okay? It's okay for me to close?
It is unfortunate. And like I said, you and I are also affected. Do you think I also like to be in the dark? My food is also rotting in the fridges, right? I had to throw away, I don't know, some fish that I brought from Western Province at the beginning of December or something like that, right? I'm affected. Everybody's affected. But this is a crisis, Costa. It's a crisis. And in a crisis, something beyond your control. It's not something that one wanted anybody to suffer. No. But you see, when you are confronted with a situation like that, you weigh, okay, this thing. What are the consequences of taking this action? And so on. What are the consequences? You weigh and you say, well, I think let us look at it. That's why you saw the president went to Mamba and say, oh, come on, please. How do you do the what do they call it, maintenance around this time when we've got a crisis? Please do it quickly so that we can at least increase some power. You've seen the president going out there to look for investment so that this problem is solved once and for all. Nobody likes it, Costa. Nobody wants anybody to suffer.
So in this crisis...
It's like if a war broke out here, everybody will suffer, but there's nothing that you can do.
So in this crisis, the UPND government is telling us that we're better off sticking to our contractual obligations of supplying power to Namibia and other places like, ESCOM, while we should tighten the belts and throw our relish and close small businesses.
We look at alternative sources, and we know very soon, I think, because thank God, I think God is listening, because the way it is raining, I think very soon we shall get back to normal.
There are serious, concerns, not just by the opposition, but by citizens. When you talk about the president shuttling, you say you're feeling sorry for him. They say he is more concerned about giving Zambia a good image outside and is not really in touch with what is happening, on the ground. Is the president, are you from the party structures really in touch and telling the president the truth of the suffering of the Zambians?
Costa, the shuttling I'm talking about, the president is not going there for joyriding or for party after party. The president is going there to look for, I told you we inherited a sick economy. The treasury was empty, there was no money. And with the engulfing debt, we were swimming in debt, drowning in debt. And where were we going to get the money to run government, to run the operations of government and so on? Where were we going to get the money? We promised people more jobs and things like that. But if we have no money, how are we going to create those jobs? So the president, him going there, is a marketing manager for Zambia, not marketing foreign relations, if you like. No, he's looking for resources to come and invest here.
So Madam SG, you're saying the president...
the IMF would have come on board. Costa, Costa, you are a family man. If you are confronted with a crisis in your home, and your wife hides the car keys, say, you are not going anywhere. Because you promised that you should stay with me, I'm your wife. Where are you going? And so on. Meanwhile, the children are dying of hunger. Would you find that fair?
But Madam SG...
Would you find that criticism fair?
Madam SG, far from the truth that the president's trips are for him to go and look for money to run the operations of this country, you presented a budget to Parliament for 2023, over 163 million, budget. Most of that budget, in terms of the income or resource envelope, is coming from taxes, local taxes.
You said most, but it's not 100%.
It's not 100%.
It's not 100%.
But just hold on.
That, there's also a foreign element. But don't forget the other bit.
Just hold on. Unless you're telling me, Madam Imenda, this evening, that the UPND wants to take us to a budget that is foreign financed. Far from the truth. No. So when you say the president is going to look for money for operations, that's far from the truth.
But Costa, where are those taxes coming from? If there are no investments, you just want to depend on the little taxes that are already pertaining. You are not going to make it. But you have to make sure that there are more investments coming. When more investments coming, you have seen he went to open is it a nickel mine there? And so on. There will be money coming in. When that money comes in, one, there will be job creation. Two, there will be taxes being paid. So more investors, as they come in and set up industries and factories and manufacturing and things like that, more taxes will be paid and more jobs will be created.
This issue of our international relations, you touched on, the IMF, and it's a good time that you've mentioned them because Kristalina Georgieva, the IMF, head, will be, in the country just, today, up to Tuesday. Again, the Zambians are concerned about the muddy, details of this IMF deal. But let me just put it to you on the table when you say these are good investments. Minister of Finance last week, Friday, was just telling us that within the next 5 years, electricity tariffs will be going up. So, electricity tariffs, first of all, electricity is still high. It's being load-shedded. Tariffs have to go high. Petrol and diesel is up on average 28 kwacha per litre. Fertilizer is high, and the IMF is telling you, you don't need to subsidize. Millimil is high. So, madam, to the viewer this evening, what are you telling them? What is so good about these international relations, yet a bag of millimil is 200 kwacha?
Your question is loaded. I don't even know where to start from. You are talking about the IMF,
yes,
or the this and this and that. You are talking. Each one of those has got a separate answer to it. Costa, one of the things we promised the Zambian people is that when we come in, because already the country is heavily indebted, right? Heavily indebted. We said, when we come into power, we are going to restructure that debt. Part of the restructuring was to go to multilateral lenders like the IMF, right? And so we had no choice to go to the IMF so that we can see how we restructure this debt. And you have seen that even China, whom we owe quite a substantial amount of that debt, 17, 19 billion, maybe if you look at maybe it's about 20 billion US dollars. We're talking about external debt. Now, China, we are owing China a substantial amount, proportion of that. Now, with the IMF coming on board, it's not just borrowing the 1.3 billion US dollars, right? It is about the confidence. Big brother, when the IMF comes on board, it gives confidence to the lenders, to the creditors, to even negotiate with Zambia. Otherwise, we had no capacity even to negotiate. The creditors would have just said, Zambia, just shut up, right? But with the IMF on board, the creditors, those we owe money, were prepared to listen to our view of restructuring that debt. Right? Otherwise, how are we going to deal with that? We had no money and so on. You are talking about subsidies. First of all, let me make a correction. It's not the IMF who said remove subsidies. Why are you laughing? It's not the IMF. We looked at all the factors. Let me give you an example. Do you know that the fuel subsidy, that PF, again, you are going to say, there you go again. The fuel subsidy that PF were giving, they never paid that money to the owners of the fuel. It is a debt we found, over 500 million US dollars, right? Now, where were we going to get the money and so on? And then, if we continued, so first of all, we had to pay that one. It was not paid during PF. They just incurred. We had to pay it. Secondly, if we continued with the subsidy, Costa, we would have to incur 67 million US dollars per month. Where were we going to get that money? Which means in a year's time from the time we took over, we would have incurred somewhere more than 800 million US dollars. Where were we going to get that money, Costa? To add to the whatever, 19 billion or 17 billion or 15, whatever, the figures keep changing and so on, of debt that we incurred. Where were we going to find the money to pay for that subsidy? We didn't have. We had no choice. You should give a credit that we have managed to pay that and so on. But we had to. It is one of those things we just have to tighten belts. Nobody likes this. I don't like it. But what could we do? So
Madam SG, you inherited debt and you inherited, fuel prices at around, 19 kwacha per liter. Mm-hmm. Now they're at average 28 kwacha, per liter. Mm-hmm. You are telling us this evening that subsidies were not attainable. We couldn't manage because of this debt. But the voter and the citizen out there is asking you this question. You told us that petrol and diesel was expensive because the PF purchase or procurement system was marred with corruption. Middlemen were stealing a 3 kwacha. Your party did calculations. You know these formulas that you were doing for electricity and fuel. You told us, this is not us, you, the Upnd, told us that when you come into power, fuel will come down from 19 kwacha to 12 kwacha. Today it's 29, and you're telling us because PF left the debt.
That's not the only reason.
So where's the petrol for 12 kwacha? And where are those formulas? Where are those formulas?
When we promised that, it was all things being equal. There are certain assumptions that all things being equal. We did not plan for the Russian-Ukraine war, right? And you know that the oil prices on the world market went up. That is beyond our control. It's beyond any country's control, especially a country like Zambia that does not produce oil, right? Even Britain, which has got, it produces oil, but it's also affected. Be surprised. It is also affected. So the oil prices on the world market went up because of the Ukraine war. So this, the cost that we're having, we are calling cost-reflective price, if you like. First of all, we could not continue with the subsidy because there was this debt which had accumulated over $500 million US. If we continued subsidizing so that we could keep the fuel price at whatever you are saying,
it's not what I'm saying, it's what you promised with your calculations.
Right. We would need to another $809 million US by the end of 12 months. Added to the 500 million, would have added over $1 billion, 1.3 billion, 1.4 billion US just for fuel alone. To add to the debt.
Granted that yes. Granted that the Russia-Ukraine war has had an impact on global fuel, prices. Granted, we agree. But responsible governments across the world during this period have put in place measures to protect and stimulate the economies. You in the Upnd are telling us, Zambians, go and fight your own battles with market-reflective prices. In fact, Madam SG, experts and your Zambian citizens are telling you this ERB monthly shuttle of prices is not working. It's bad for business planning. But you're not a listening government.
Like I said, even it's not just Zambia. Even the fuel prices, oil prices go up on the world market. Costa, it's not just Zambia. I've given you an example. The world over, I think you saw some kind of stampede. Was it in Kenya or someplace? Because if we did what Kenya did, that, okay, we maintain that price, what, and so on, but then with the amount of money that we had, we would need to reduce on the quantity of oil. Now, which one is a better evil? That people pay cost-reflective fuel price, or we because the commodity price has gone up, the oil has gone up, so we use the same amount of money, which means then we would order less fuel and cause a shortage. I don't know which one would be a better evil.
I think the better evil of what the citizens are what the citizens are trying to tell you is to be a more protective, and responsible government that incentivizes the local market. Don't you agree, Madam SG, that these high fuel prices also increase the cost of doing business? Because once petrol goes up, prices of basic commodities go up.
We are very much aware, Costa.
So transport has gone up?
But I've given you a scenario.
So is that the better evil for you?
And if there was a shortage? If there was a shortage of fuel? What would it be? At least when there's the price going, the one who can afford, at least they can. But if there's a shortage, there's nothing, there's no alternative. What were you going to do? They would shut down, right? They would shut down. But at the moment, when the price is up, compared to lack of the commodity, at least people do see how they can make ends meet. And mind you, Costa, even if the previous government was here, the fuel price, they had already had on the cards that they were going to increase the price of fuel. It was there on their cards.
So make us understand.
Just like the IMF, they had approached the IMF, but because they lacked credibility, that's why they couldn't succeed.
So make us understand.
So now when somebody has succeeded, you start making noise. It's not fair.
So you call Zambians who are complaining about 29 kwacha per litre of petrol as expensive as making noise?
No. I'm talking about the opposition. I'm not talking about Zambians.
They're also Zambians.
I'm talking about the opposition. They are partly responsible for this, but they are the first ones to make so much noise. They were going to increase, right?
I was going to ask, so are you departing from your formulas of telling us that the PF procurement systems were marred with fraud and corruption? The 3 kwacha in the petrol, you equally told us that you will change the fertilizer procurement system. You're departing from that?
We're not departing.
That things you found cannot enable you to reduce the cost of fertilizer and petrol?
Oh, okay. Let's not put all things together. Let's get them one by one. I think we are on fuel here, right? We are on fuel. And on fuel, we are looking, that's why we are looking at alternatives so that we can meet our promises, right? So that's why we are looking at this. I think you have only that some of these things, they cannot be short term. The government has already spoken with the government of Angola because they have oil, right? To see as a route that can come. But that can't come overnight because we don't even have the infrastructure between Angola and here. So to invest in that, it takes time. You know how long it took Zambia during the Kaunda era to get the pipeline from Tanzania. It's not something, and it requires investment. And that investment requires somebody to come on board to assist. You know how the Tazama pipeline was built. You know Costa. I don't have to tell you. The Italian government and the Tanzanian government, the Zambian government. It was a tripartite thing. So now while we're looking at how we are going to finance this pipeline from, it is not something that can take overnight. Yeah? So because of that, for the time being, we have to tighten the belts. We don't like it, Costa. If you are building a house in your home because you are staying in a rented house, and you said, guys, time for eating chicken every day, even though I'm a broadcaster, Costa Mwanza, I cannot afford it because we're building a house in Ibex. So some of the money that we get, it will have to go towards buying, building that house. So for now, Tideko ni kalembula once in a while natu soya and beans, and then maybe once in a week chicken, once in a week fish, and so on. So the family might complain the way our people are complaining, but when the house is complete, they'll be very happy to move in a new house. So Zambians, yes, are complaining, but with the measures that we're putting in place, when they come to fruition, Costa, Zambians will be smiling. And like I said, we still have 43 months.
I love the example you give, but what many Zambians are saying, Madam SG, is that things are actually getting from bad, where you found them with the PF, they were bad. Now they're getting worse. Let's go to agriculture and the fertilizer issue. And I'm happy that I'm speaking to somebody who's been in Parliament and who has served rural constituencies. Many people, really, to be honest, had high hopes of the Upnd because the president is a farmer. Most of you understand these things. But from 400 kwacha a bag of fertilizer to about 1,200. This is a disaster, Madam SG, that even as we speak today, there are places in this country that have not received Bessel fertilizer. How, under the Upnd, is such a disaster?
Costa, that is unfortunate. That is regrettable. On that one, we concede. But the measures we're putting in place, as I said, we couldn't do things overnight. There are certain things that we learn. It's a bad experience, but from that experience, we'll rise up from that dust and shake off, and we'll do better. Just watch the space.
Yes, you've considered and taken responsibility. There are concerns and threats of hunger in the next, season, based on the late, distribution. But as you say, you'll do better. Would you promise us this evening that prices of fertilizer will come down and people will get inputs on time? And how are you going to do that?
I was addressing, just now, on the distribution aspect. I wasn't addressing the price. Because again, fertilizer is a commodity that is external. It's an external commodity. And because of the Russian-Ukraine war, the fertilizer prices also went up. It's not here. If it came here at the old price that we knew, and then we increased it to this level, we'll say, yes, I think here, what's going on? But the prices went up that side. And one of the measures, in fact, which could have contributed to even the delays, is that we were trying to address even that issue for something on top in terms of the procurement system, the prices, and so on. We're trying to address that issue. One of the things we're saying, why don't we try to concentrate on the local manufacturers of fertilizer? But maybe it's a decision that came a bit late, right? So that's why I'm saying we have learned all these things. For somebody who's looking from outside, we just think this. But these are some of the things we're trying to address, the procurement system, and then maybe why don't we prop up the local manufacturing, because it has got a lot of benefits, including job creation and things like that. And, of course, capacity of our own industries to produce instead of always depending on the outside.
I believe as SG of the party, you interact with the grassroots. So in very simple terms, what would be your answer to somebody asking tonight that you told us that under the PF, there was Kasamfi? That's why fertilizer is high.
Partly, yes.
At about 450. Now you come into power to clean up that mess. You remove the something. It goes up double the price.
Because the source, the price at the source has gone up, which we have no control. And that's why we want to answer that one by not depending on the outside, because the outside market is turbulent. So let us look inwards and see how we can better the system. Just give us time. That's what I'm going to tell. You say how I'll tell the person called in Tawi.
How much time? 43 months?
We are going to improve. We are putting in the measures. Be patient with us, Napapata.
So one of the questions I always, ask politicians world over. I mean, we've heard campaign slogans and promises of, let's make America great. This can do. Bali will fix it, and so on. You have heard now that you, as a UPnd, are being called a one-term party, or sometimes Bali, Muntu Wabufi, and things like that. What is your response to this political feeling and undertone on the ground that people feel cheated by your campaign promises?
Yes, we have heard that. We have heard, and it's not something that is pleasant. But I can assure you, first of all, I think I've answered the issue of the fact that certain things happened. They're out of our control. We did not anticipate there was going to be the Russian-Ukraine war. We did not anticipate that the Zambezi River and the Kafue River after how many years? From 2015 to now, 7 years or something like that, that the river these rivers were going to dry up, so to say. We have learned that one. But aside that, Costa, we still have 43 months. And mind you, why the people are looking at this one because they are affected, they are hungry and things like that. And a hungry man is an angry man. We understand. But what we are saying is that have people forgotten? Are people not appreciating some of the things that we have, which we promised and we have implemented? Are they all those washed down the drain just because we have these 2 hiccups? No. And as we go in this with the measures that we are putting in place, the Zambians will appreciate when they start bearing fruits. For now, yes, they are hungry and they are angry. But I have no doubt in my mind that when these measures were putting in place start bearing fruit, things will change.
An angry man indeed is, I mean, a hungry man is an angry man, like you rightly put it.
Yes.
This country, from the UNIP era, has, seen history of riots or protests by people, especially when it comes to high meal, prices, because that is our staple food in Shima. I saw the Minister of Agriculture last week in the company of FRA and millers, and this is a historical problem, issue of millers getting subsidized, maize from FRA, smuggling and so on. The Upnd has been long talking about this. I want to find out from you this evening, what is the cause of the high prices of meal? Because surely people expect that they should be lower.
Costa, I really don't know. I can only assume or presume. I can only, maybe speculate on the reason. And one of the reasons is the same word I've used, speculation. I think there were some people who bought maize for speculative purposes or went and kept and then they resell and therefore they make something on top. I'm just speculating. I don't know whether that's the thing. I've never even spoken to the Food Reserve Agents myself, right? But I'm just making an assumption like anybody else because it's an issue even I don't understand. Why the price of meal suddenly. Sometimes I would even, as a politician, I would even say, Costa, maybe sabotage. I don't know. If I knew, I'll tell you.
So definitely you're not happy about the price of meal.
How can anybody be happy about that situation? No ways.
So again, I ask on behalf of a struggling, citizen out there, when the Upnd comes and tells us that they've managed to reduce inflation from 24% to single digit, will I eat that single digit when I walk into not even ShopRite, but Pakandemba? A bag of meal is 200 kwacha.
Okay.
I'll eat speculation.
It's just like you have asked me the previous question. I can only speculate. But I think for some time, it was at the price we found it. Yes, they expected it to go down. Yes, inflation rate has gone down. But Costa, what does inflation rate mean? It's the rate at which prices increase. Now, for some time, minimum was, if there was an increase, very marginal, 2 kwacha, 5 kwacha maximum. It never went to that level. What it means with the inflation rate coming down from 24% to below 10%, 9.7, 9.8%, if that inflation rate remained at 24%, I can assure you, Costa, this time minimum would be hitting 350 kwacha, and all other prices would have hit an all-time high if the inflation rate remained at that. But it's because the inflation rate was contained. That's why, apart from what has happened within the past 1 week of unexplained minimum price rises, right? It would have been something else. It would have gone much higher. Costa, I'm a shopper, right? Obviously, as somebody who has got a home or runs a home, right? I think you agree that some prices came down. The price of commodities like cooking oil, eggs, never mind in ShopRite, but eggs, never mind in ShopRite. The prices in ShopRite, I don't know, they never come down. But one of these days I was planning that if it wasn't for these external things, and if we had managed to, like, the price of fuel, if there was no war, and the ShopRite are not reducing the prices, I would be one of those who would have gone with a placard.
Yeah, I'm happy that you're admitting some of these things, but
what am I saying, Costa? The prices of other commodities actually came down thanks to containing inflation?
Again, I'll speak from this incoherence that we see. On one hand, you tell us inflation has come down only to hold the prices. Only to hold the prices. But in my layman perspective, and I'm sure for that of the viewers, I'm expecting that when I'm told that when inflation is down, it will correlate with prices coming, down. We saw my good friend, Mr. Tabo Kawan, at one point taking a trolley into ShopRite, that prices had come down because of the US dollar, which is against it, going up. I think let's be serious for the Zambians. Are you, the Upnd, going to lead us or manage us on speculation or tell us things are just out of your control? There's really nothing you can do?
Costa, you are explaining the economics. And this is the thing for a difficult, maybe for a lay person to understand what I've explained. Yes, anybody, an ordinary person, would expect that if inflation rate has come down, then the prices will come down. But what we are saying, because of these other external factors and things like the fuel price is high and all these other factors, even though the inflation rate has come down, it means the rate at inflation rate is the rate at which the prices go up. So you would find that if it was at 24% and maybe it would continue rising, it would mean that today you go in the shop, you buy mini meal at 150 kwacha. You go there, when that one is finished, you go next time, you find it is already at 155. The next week, you go, you find it's 160 or 170. It would just, by this time, Costa, I'm explaining from the economics point of view. I'm trying to explain from the layman's point of view so that people understand that, yes, it is expected that, but that is not what, that is not the meaning of that. It's part of it, yes. If all things are equal, we expect they would have come down. But also because of these other overriding factors, it could have been worse. All I'm saying, the word is, that's right, it could be worse.
So as we put everything in one basket, high cost of living, commodities, electricity, fuel, and everything, you have told us that you found a mess and you're asking for a little bit more, time. When will the situation change?
First of all, I was about to explain what we have done so far. Some of these things, we take them for granted, right? But economics, things work together. Like the biblical saying, all things work together for good. These things don't work in isolation. Right? So, with all these things happening, what we're explaining is that, like I said, it could be worse. But, as I say, things, they interact, if you like. The fact that we have implemented free education, Costa, if you have, I don't know how many of your children are going to school, to government school, right? Of course, you as a broadcaster, one of them, maybe you can afford, right? But for people like us, so your children, if let's say 3 of your children are going to school, you were spending how much? For argument's sake, I'm just dreaming figures. You were spending per term, if you like, let's say, I think it was it 350 kwacha or 400? It was going up to 650, 700 kwacha in government schools, especially at secondary school. For one child, if you had 3 children, you're spending 2,100. Forget about the uniform, the books, because those ones, even now you're still, but on the fees alone. Now, we have taken that burden from you of paying those fees. So 2,000 kwacha now has gotten back into your pocket. Mind you, when you save on a cash outflow, it is considered a cash inflow. So now you have an extra 2,100 in your pocket. That cushions the increase in the price of the other commodities we're talking about, like milling. Let's not ignore that, right? What about the teachers and health workers who have recruited? We have empowered some people. You can imagine those people, when they were not working, they have to be subjected to buying this milling meal at this price. They wouldn't afford. But at least a certain 42,000 of them, they have already been empowered. So they can afford to pay for that meal. Let's not look at these issues in isolation. Right? The social cash transfer, we have increased it, both the outreach, the number of people, recipients, and the quantum. Right? They now have money. They can buy that milling meal. Can you imagine? That's what I'm saying. It could be worse if with these prices they had nothing. Right? What about the retirees, Costa? What about the retirees who had spent the past, I don't know whether 30 years or 20-something years, not getting their money? We paid them. And now they can afford. Yes, we have this challenge, which we are addressing, Costa. I'm telling you, we are addressing. Just watch this space. We still have 43 months.
In conclusion, Madam SG, something directly from the party. You definitely did suffer a lot at the hands of reduced freedom of assembly, freedom of expression during your time in the opposition, attacks on radio stations and failing to interact and hold meetings. And one of the things you strongly advocated for was the restoration of rule of law and order in public spaces, markets and bus stops. Granted, we saw that come through when you just were sworn into office. We are worried, however, that this thing is beginning to rear its ugly head. Chingola, Muflira, your party members and cadres storming radio stations and doing exactly that which was being, done to you. What are you doing to address this? It's beginning to get worrying. Markets in Lusaka, you've had pockets of these violence, chairpersons and so on. Yes,
Costa. That is very unfortunate. Very unfortunate. But I like you mentioned that for some time that directive was holding. But you see, like weeds in the field, Costa. You go with what do you call them? Weed killer. You spray, right? You expect that all the weeds will be dead. But you find one raising its ugly head here and there and so on, and then you have to go and start plucking them out. It's the same with human nature, right? That's human nature. Even children who come from the same womb are not the same. Among those, there will be criminals, there will be what, and things like that. So even though the president and the party, we are on record of saying no cadreism, no this, no that. Cadreism. It's about lawlessness, right? It's about pangas. It's about extortion. It's about violence. At least we have managed to contain, but there are still pockets there because individuals, there are those who smoke dagga, there are those who, they are different. But
just as a rider,
Costa, as a party, we are on record of saying the police, let them be professional, let them do their work. We are on record of saying, if you do such things, you commit such acts, you are on your own. The party, because they don't have the blessing of the party.
Just allow me. You've made it very clear that there's no blessing from the party, and you've, Minister Nkombo, yourselves, the president, you will not accept cadreism. We've seen some even being, arrested. But my question is it enough just to make these statements? Because that is not sorting the root or the cause of the problem. I think many of these youths, what are you saying to them in the party? Most of them feel, I don't know if you've heard this, but I'm sure you have. They worked, they call themselves freedom fighters, they fought, they struggled for the party, and you're not empowering them. What is in it for them? Some accuse you, Imamuleria, Pamulo, and others have gotten their jobs, their appointments. What about us? So will a mere pronouncement to say, no caterism, sort my joblessness? I think you've heard this.
Yes. Yes, I've heard. And I really sympathize. Because one of the things we have done as a party, first of all, we could not allow them to do, because what some of them thought would do is that the shoes that are left by PF, they are going to put their feet there. So we were going to replace the caterism at bus stops and so on, just changing the faces, and the PF go away and ours go there. But we have said no. So that is one of the reasons of discontent. Now you have stopped us. But the other thing that we have done is that whereas under the previous regime, it was the party and its government. They were able to get resources from the government in various ways. It will be another interview if I gave you the various ways that the PF was getting money for their members. With us, one of the things we have done, I don't know, Costa, whether you know that, we are delinked. We as a party, Upnd, we are delinked from the government. The government have got their own, we have, and as a party, we are still, in other words, we are still like the way we're in opposition. We don't have enough money. We are still trying to find ways of raising resources to take care of our members. And we sympathize. It's very sad. I can tell you, as a Deputy Secretary General, they come to me every day. This one comes. You remember, my vehicle was torched, what. And I don't know what to do. Some are coming, oh, I have a bullet in me, I still have a bullet, I've got a broken arm, and things like that. I don't have food because they came and they burned my house. They destroyed my house during that time. So what do you do? It is sometimes it makes me feel like crying, right? But we are still trying to find ways of raising resources so that we can take care of our members. Jobs, yes, that's why, again, we tell them that, okay, although they have to compete with everybody else, for those who qualify for jobs that are available, they compete with everybody. They apply, they are either taken or they are not taken. But at least those who qualify, they have got that opportunity. Yeah? But there are those who are in the majority, who don't qualify. They don't have grade 12 certificates. Those are issues we are looking at. Under CDF, there's an element, if they form cooperatives, right, they maybe so that they can do business, they'll be assisted from CDF, like anybody else, because it's available for everybody. It's not just for party members. And maybe that's what annoys them, because they feel that they should have been given a priority, even in all these things. But we have agreed that we're not going to do things that way. So it is very unfortunate, and I do sympathize. So there's that element at CDF. And they can also go on training at these trades schools so that they can be empowered in terms of skills, and then they can access to do some business or artisan or whatever. They can employ it as the artisans and things like that. Then there's also, we have, under the Ministry of Youth and Sport, there's a window there, there's some money there where they can access that to do businesses, right? Then there's also at the Ministry of Small Medium Enterprise, Small Medium whatever, that ministry, right? There's something there also that they can access. I think you heard recently they have accessed from the CEC. That is another one. The CEC, again, that one is not looking at grade 12 or whatever. So if you can have a good business proposal and so on, you can access. Finally, those are all empowerment avenues for those who cannot get jobs. Because you realize it's not possible to employ everybody. We don't have that capacity. I mean, the army, or rather, the Defense Forces are recruiting right now together with the Ministry of Home Affairs, Police, whatever. But understand it's about 5,000 to 6,000. But do you know how many applications they got? 200,000.
Finally, Madam Deputy SG, finally, President Hichilema continues to remain president of the United Party for National Development. He's still president as well as president of the country.
Yes.
As Deputy SG, is the president still in touch? Is he in line with your party, since you say you've been delinked from government? Is the president still popular within the rank and file of the party? And I ask this question with the background of what you've just been explaining, in that some of your members, we monitor these things, feel that the president is very detached from his own party that took him to State House. Do you feel?
Costa, do you want me to be fired? Why are you asking me such a question?
It's very important.
No, never mind. That is just a joke. The first 1 year, the first 16 months, if you like, the president has been very busy for the country. He told us, you have married me off to 19 million Zambians. Yes, he has been very busy. But at the last NMC meeting, he told us, I think now I'll be available for the party. His words, not mine. So, I think he's coming on board. He's still with the party, but was still very busy fixing the economy for 19 million Zambians, who includes you and me.
Thank you so much for coming through to the Costa this evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Costa.
We've been discussing an array of economic issues with the Deputy Secretary General of the ruling UPND, Madam Getrude Imenda. Remember to catch us live on Facebook, it's Diamond TV Zambia. Also, download the Airtel TV app for live streaming. Thank you so much for watching. Good night and God bless.
Costa was brought to you by FQM Trident Limited, a subsidiary of First Quantum Minerals Limited.
Shake things up with Shake and Sip Fruity Milk.
Go, go, go.
Shake and Sip, when fresh meets fruity.
You know, in Ghana, when someone passes,